Welcome to Soul Led Lifestyle Podcast with me, Adele McCoy, and my magical guests, giving you the strategy, tools, and activation you'll need to create your soul led life. Welcome to another edition of Soul Led Lifestyle Podcast with me, Adele McCoy, and today we have the wonderful Abigail Barbarella on our show, and she is on to talk all about how she helps high value women cultivate their energy and open up to what's truly possible out there in their lives. Okay, she incorporates so many elements in her work. She does astrology, quantum physics, energy, alchemy, physical mastery, and intuitive somatics. So she is really, really, literally the go-to person if you need help in any of that area. I absolutely enjoyed talking with her, and you're going to absolutely enjoy hearing all about her story and her work. So sit back, relax, and I shall see you on the other side. Hi, Abigail. How are you?
Good, Adele. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you for having me.
We're just going to jump straight in, as I always do. And I just want to ask you a little bit about yourself growing up. What was life like for you?
I had a really chaotic and interesting childhood. And so that's kind of the start of my life was just growing up in kind of like chaos. And I feel like that shaped a lot of what I had to kind of figure out at a really young age. And my intuition and those kind of things started coming online early.
Okay. And did you grow up in like a busy household, or was it just you?
So I was the third of three kids, and my mom was a single mom, so she was working a lot, and it was a very busy, but also there was a lot of quiet time that we all took from each other, and that was nice. And I always had time out in nature, so getting outside and being by the trees was how I kind of grounded myself and really anchored into like my connection with the elementals and things like that. So I'm really grateful for the childhood that I had, but it definitely some hard lessons came at a really young age. So that's kind of the way it was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it makes you who you are today. But it's really cool that you had that connection with the elementals so young, and not being scared and understanding what they're all about,
Well, and that's the one thing I'll say about the women. So I was raised in a matriarchy. My mother's father died after the World War II. So when she was a baby, he died, and my grandma was a matriarchy of our family. And then I had, all of, like, my mom was a Scorpio. All of the aunts were, Scorpio or Pisces. They were just so connected to nature. And so that was the biggest blessing is, I definitely didn't have a perfect childhood, and things were chaotic, and my father was abusive, and that was like the first 8 years of my life was going through extreme abuse around that. But my aunts had this way, this very witchy way about them that we'd go track animals in the forest, and we were always out there, and so it definitely shaped who I am. And I learned really young to have that trust of nature, which I think a lot of people don't have the experience of having. So I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So when would you say was kind of the pivotal moment that you kind of moved into the journey of like your like really putting it out there with your spirituality and stuff like that? Was it in
Yeah.
stages or?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there were stages of consciousness around it. I mean, I think I still sometimes have this feeling, and I think a lot of people have it. I've talked to different like people that are very spiritual, where there is this sense, because we see the best in people, or because we see a different glimpse of like the higher self in people,
Mm-hmm.
where we think everybody thinks the way that we do, or has I know that everyone has the capability to have this connection, and to have this confidence, and to have this trust of self.
Yeah.
But that has gotten me into trouble, or into thinking that like everyone just knows, like, of course,
Mm.
and I think that's what's taken me the longest, is to recognize, like, no, not everyone chooses to see things the way that I do, and that's great, and that's fine, and everyone has their own path. But honoring that path, and honoring that it is a unique journey, I think has taken me a lot longer than kind of like maybe as a soul I thought
Mm-hmm.
it would.
Yeah.
So yeah, so my spiritual journey, obviously I think all of our spiritual journeys start before we actually incarnate, before we're here. But at a very young age, I knew that I had a special connection, or a strange connection, that was maybe, of course, I didn't see it as a gift. I thought it was something that was like a weakness,
Mm-hmm.
a sensitivity. But and then through the process of becoming a mother, through different experiences that I've had in my life, it has shaped that, and continues to. I think it's an ever evolving process. So I didn't start in this particular like spiritual work necessarily until 2013. But before then, everything was shaped by my connection to spirit, right? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
hard to say exactly when I
Yeah.
recognized that or knew that. One of the biggest, like, kind of, I would say, like, initiations that I had was when I was 14. I got in an argument with I was raised Catholic. And so I got in an argument with my Catholic teacher, and she was saying that animals don't go to heaven. And I was like, that's just nonsense. Like, I don't even know why you think you know that. Like, and of course, I had to go like copy the Bible. And it was like in that moment, I'm like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
what is this thing that I'm a part of? And so then when it was time to get, like, I think it's like the confirmation at 15, I just like walked out of class. I was like, I'm done. And I remember at the time, like, it might not be that big of a deal, but like at the time, all of my best friends, all of my family, all of the community was like, you're never going to be able to get married in the church.
Oh,
You're never going to be
wow.
able to do this thing. You're, turning away from God. You're turning away from the church. And it was a really big deal. And I
Yeah.
think it showed me something about myself, that I was willing to stand for what I believed in,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of like how my very best friends, like, the closest people to me, were questioning my, I guess. And it's a lot has come up in these last few years around this too, like questioning my sanity, or questioning
Okay.
my choices, right? And
Yeah.
so
Uh-huh.
like now I see that more and more. It's like there's some deep trust that
Mm-hmm.
I had at that time, that was initiated, where it's like I really don't think most people trust themselves enough to make their own decisions, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times we'll just like follow trends or fads or
Yeah.
whatever is being taught to them, which is not necessarily a problem, but can get us into trouble when it comes to living our dharma and living our truth, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, so many people will be able to relate with feeling like your friends think you're a bit weird, or you're not quite right, or but I
Yeah.
like that. I like that element of not being like everyone else. I
Mhm.
like looking a little bit like, oh, is she all right in the mind? Is she all right in the, because I feel more free, because I'm not, like you said, part of
Mhm.
that tribe of following. I live as my soul chooses to live. You know,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and yeah, a bit like you, I've made some decisions, and people go, "Oh, are you sure, Adele?" Like, but it is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess then at a young age for you, you had that huge sense of empowerment, and you knew your power as well. You knew
Mhm.
what could come of you making your own decision from a very young age, and how your world can change for the better, you know?
For sure.
Um, yeah. So then what
And I
happened?
will say, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with church. I don't want to be
Yeah.
like, but for me, it was so clear that I had a connection running that was not in alignment with, I had a connection running with God, goddess, source, that was
Yeah.
not in alignment with the church's connection and
Yeah.
how, and I had a dream. This was like when I, probably even before I started my business. So in Catholic Church, they do the Ash Wednesday where they put a cross, but they put it, and I never thought about this, but they put it on your third eye.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really thought about the meaning of that, but I had this dream where I was the priest and I was washing off the third eye. Like I was
Oh,
like, people were coming up and I was like clearing the charcoal or whatever they use off
yeah.
of the third eye. And it was like, oh, I get it now.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
You know?
That's a powerful dream in itself. So,
Yeah.
when did you decide then to start working with your gifts and taking them out there to the world and sharing your knowledge?
Yeah, for sure. I thought I would be a midwife or work in the birth world. And so I definitely had that focus and I was kind of like undercover doing very like, intuitive, witchy things to help clear the way for the baby or to, we were doing a lot of like, I would do the family's astrological charts together and talk about, different things with them or, really tuning in with the baby's spirit. And so I was doing that, but it was under the guise of birth work and
Okay.
being a doula and childbirth educator. And there was one moment where I was like, towards the end, I actually got a job. I was working in the hospital as well, and I was walking through the hospital halls, and I was like, I'm like a shaman in this like very sterile environment, and
Yeah.
it just didn't match anymore. It was like
Yeah.
what I'm wanting to offer, what I'm wanting to do, it doesn't match anymore. And that also, like, my mother, for as how supportive she was, that was the one thing that she didn't want me doing this work that I'm doing right now,
Oh, wow.
because she
Okay.
was she was scared for me. She thought, it would make me a target, that men wouldn't understand, that, I wouldn't be supported in it. And I think that had a lot to do with the context of what she grew up with, and always feeling kind of
Yeah.
like she didn't fit in.
Uh-huh.
So it was a very cool process to go through too. And I think that's part of like what I hear from clients and what I hear from people and friends a lot, is that we have to go through this hero's journey. It's like, I'm a very big fan of Carl Jung. And I feel like there is this point where if we're going to do what we came here to do, we are going to have to confront even our most beloveds, and
Mhm.
and maybe even do something that they wouldn't want us to do in order to live our dharma. So I do feel like that was just a part of my process, and it almost was like this graduation where it was like, wow, if I can go against what my mother is saying, this woman that I love so much and has been
Yeah.
such a spiritual teacher for me, then I can do this.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So, when you started to do the spiritual work, what was the first thing you done? What was the first thing you kind of advertised and put out there for everyone?
Yeah, so when I first started coming out into this work, I started doing just like intuitive sessions, like reading energy um, work, and then I didn't even start with astrology work, even though that's where I probably was the most comfortable. But I started with reading energy and having like clairvoyant sessions. And
Okay.
I had a little office in Portland, and people would come in, and I'd do their reading, and it was lovely.
Yeah. Sounds cozy.
Yeah, it was so cozy.
Yeah.
It was very cozy.
So then astrology. So that you would say that is kind of your biggest focal in within your business.
It's probably the tool that I feel, I think these are all divination tools, like, tarot, astrology, even like energetic reading or any kind of like energy work. I do feel like they're different tools. And I would say I feel maybe my ego feels the most confident in astrology, or
Hmm.
that I feel like it's the thing that I have the most expertise in, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So looking back when you asked that question, I was like, oh, I'm surprised I didn't start with astrology, you know?
Uh-huh.
Um, but I do think that there are times like when I'm doing training students and or doing a reading and they're like, well, where do you see that in the astrological chart? Like, where do you see that thing? And I can't tell them. I'm just like,
Mhm.
I guess it is energy because I can't exactly tell you why that channel just like opened up and I started speaking about that, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So
So
I think
could
it's all of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit about what astrology is in a nutshell for someone that maybe hasn't got a clue what it's all about?
Yeah. So astrology is the science of the movement of the planets through the zodiac, through the zodiac wheel, and so it's this 360-degree circle around our planet, and the map of that at the moment that you take your first breath maps out what I believe and many astrologers believe is just a mirror reflection of what your soul's dharma, karma, lessons and challenges and gifts represent. So it's not that astrology is the thing that defines that, it's that it's just a way to read that map.
Mhm.
So it
Okay.
never infringes upon our free will. And this is what I try to remind people of all the time because there's a lot of fear based astrology and there's a lot of fear based people when they hear something like, oh, like the sky is falling energy,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I try to remind people it's based on our choices. It's always a choice and what we're going to tune into and what we're going to decide for ourselves. And
Mhm.
astrology is meant to bolster that and support that and affirm that. Sorry, is it's meant to affirm that versus work against us or be
Yeah.
the hindrance or be the thing like, oh, this is why I'm not going to have that thing because I
Yeah.
have my Chiron at the top of my chart, which I do. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So if
Okay.
anybody can say that, it's like, there you go.
Yeah.
Chiron is
Okay.
the wounded healer. So I did glimpse at your chart. And so you have Chiron in the fourth house. So we
Okay.
have the opposite. So we like play off each other's energy in a really beautiful way in terms of like the healing and so Chiron, the wounded healer, is about the wound that is never going away within ourselves. We all have an Achilles heel. We all have a part of ourselves that has to question, if God is real, why would I have this thing?
Yeah.
Why would I
Mhm.
have this suffering?
Yeah.
Why would this be the thing? And like, of course, like, how else could we really come back to source without being challenged in that way?
Yeah.
But if Chiron is worked with in a real sense, in a real beautiful way, it becomes the thing that we bring healing to others. And it's not about us, it's about bringing that healing to others based on the compassion and the lessons and the healing work that we've done on ourselves. So
Oh wow.
that's
There's
Chiron, to
so
just give an.
much with this. Like literally, Abigail, you done my chart the other day and I've been like listening back to your voice note about 10 times just to really
Oh,
understand it all. But I'm gonna have like a proper full on session with you, which I can't wait for. But yeah, I'm very, very, very much intrigued with things like that because and I think like for someone say like my partner Rufus, he's very much a logical brain. So to
mm-hmm.
him, that would suit him because it's the
Yes.
planets. It's kind of like, okay, I know the planets move and I know the planets do certain things. I can link with that. So I think for
Yeah.
someone you know, who's kind of trying to get into the spiritual world but very much logical, astrology would be really good for them, a good place for them to start.
100%. Because you can say like, look
Yeah.
here, this is where I see this and this is why.
Yeah.
And my favorite thing about astrology is it opens up the question. It's
Yeah.
not even like, and that's why like in a full-on session, it's opening up the question like, what does this look like for you? Where have you noticed this in your life, as opposed to telling you, right, like X, Y, and Z. It's like
Yeah.
opening up that question based on something that we see. And so I do think it's a beautiful tool. My favorite is reading for couples. And that's actually
Ah.
how one of the ways one of my first teachers at university. Like just there was no logical reason that my human development teacher was also an astrologer, and she really took me like under her wing and told me, like, she just spoke truth to me in such a way. But she did me and my partner at the time's chart
Yeah.
together, and it was such a beautiful experience because it's that honoring of this soul that you chose to spend your life with, or that you
Yeah.
chose to spend time with, that it's an honoring of who they are and who they're not, right? Like,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and the characters and the what we call the wanderers of the planets, like what archetypes this person is like working through and wearing. And
Yeah.
in that process, in a couple, it's so powerful because we're never going to find someone that's everything, right? we're
Yeah.
going to we're going to find the perfect match for the lessons we're working through at the time.
Uh-huh. Definitely.
So how we mirror that with each other is really cool
Yeah.
too.
Uh-huh. And I think it's quite poignant that you say that you're never going to find the perfect match on everything. You're not going to get all your boxes ticked. Um,
Exactly.
it's because you have to be able to compromise in some places within a relationship, because there's a learning in that for you. There's a reason why you have to
Mm-hmm.
compromise in that place, you know.
For sure.
So yeah. Yeah, I love that. So
Yeah,
then,
the three things, oh
yeah.
sorry,
Yeah,
the
go on.
three things that I say are like, is this still the relationship, like the house of the relationship? Is this still a place where you can expand and grow? Is this still someone that respects your boundaries?
Okay.
And is this still a supportive energy to what you came here to do? And if those answers are yes, then you're in the right place, and it
Oh, I'm
doesn't
in the
have to.
right place.
I know. I heard you talking about your man. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I'm in the right place. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So so you do your astrology, and what else do you do? You do coaching as well. And so when you coach, I'm guessing that the astrology is definitely a huge part of the coaching side, to
Yeah.
help coach your client.
For sure. And it's one of those things that I have clients where we for whatever reason they're not really wanting to start with the chart. And so we dive into the coaching, and it's always so hilarious because then when we do inevitably look at the chart, there it is.
Yeah.
And it's like it doesn't really matter. It's all comes out the way it's meant to.
Mhm.
And at the same time, for me, and I talked about this with you before. So with me, because I spent so much of my childhood like kind of bounced out of my body,
Yeah.
and it wasn't really safe for me to be fully embodied as a child. And so I had this beautiful connection to like the elementals and spirit and all these things. But for me, part of my path and my journey is being here and being okay, like being
Mhm.
in this body, being okay, being fully here, fully present. And so a lot of my work is taking that, because when I do the astrological chart reading, it is this channel, and I do feel kind of disconnected from the body.
Yeah.
Uh, and so doing the embodiment work, sorry, I didn't know if there was if it's catching up to me.
No, it's fine.
um, so, okay. Um, so doing that embodiment work, the somatic work, the dialogue with parts of ourselves, it's almost like what I've recognized or seen similarities in like soul retrieval work or the shamanism, um, and that we're dialoguing with parts of ourselves that feel a certain way. So sometimes it's past life work, sometimes it's inner child work, oftentimes it's both. So we'll have experiences in a past life that match an experience in our childhood. And so even if we just did the inner child work, it wouldn't really get the resolution that our soul desires, because it's repeating itself from a past incarnation. That's just my belief. And so we go back and we're with that part of ourselves that like, was witch hunted or was like silenced or had these experiences or was the one silencing others. We go back and we're with that part of ourselves in a very compassionate and loving way, regardless of the circumstances. And that brings peace to a part of our consciousness. So that whole thing of like, 90% or more of our brain is the subconscious. I believe that's also where these soul fragments can be kind of embedded into our shadow or our sabotage if it's not fully accepted and loved, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of the work is understanding why when we set a goal or we want to do something in our life, why we don't make the actions to actually do it or make it happen. And that's where the chart comes in, because it's like affirming, like, yeah, you want to do this thing, I see it, like,
Yeah.
here it
Mm-hmm.
is. And then people are like, but because and I'm like, okay, let's go there, like, let's dive into that and clear that and really affirm the part of you that knows that this is what you're here to do, because once you do that, there's no going back,
Yeah.
right? So
Uh-huh.
mhm.
Wow. It's so powerful. It truly is. Um, so for someone who may be just starting out and they're wanting to embark on a spiritual journey, what what sort of advice would you give them? Where would you tell them to start? Because it can be a bit of a rabbit hole, and
Mhm.
um if you're not looking in the right places, it can be very overwhelming and, sometimes a little bit scary if it's new. So what would you suggest to them that they kind of get used to doing first or looking into first?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to, with any modality or divination tool or anything, does it bring you closer to your truth, to your highest self, or does it take you away? Or, does it make you feel less than, or does it make you feel more?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like with anything that we're learning or starting, like what you mentioned about the rabbit hole can take us further away from ourselves, right? So it's like, okay, how to come back. And so I do recommend practicing with divination tools to build that self trust. And at some point, like, it's like these baby steps, at some point you'll recognize that your body is a pendulum, like, right, like
Mm-hmm.
your intuition is a pendulum. And it's okay in the beginning to feel like you're making things up or to feel like you don't really know, because ultimately you're starting to dialogue with something so much bigger than your human, where it's going to feel like that. It's going to feel a little, um, you're going to feel unsure. You're going to question yourself. And the only way to strengthen that is to practice and to be shown you can trust yourself,
Yeah.
and to start to identify who were the characters in your life or the people in your life that made you feel like you couldn't trust yourself. And
Okay.
oftentimes we'll see, the school system or our parents or different coaches or teachers maybe instilled a little bit of distrust of the self.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And in terms of like um in terms of like if someone wants to say, I don't know, because what I find is, like, for me personally, when I was embarking on this journey, I always had my gifts. But then
Mm-hmm.
when I decided to come out of the spiritual closet, as it were, and tell the world what
Mm-hmm.
I do, I started very light, even though I knew I was very deep and there was so much there, because
Mm-hmm.
I was aware of my gifts, but I wanted to start very light. You know what I mean by very light, don't you? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Yeah, yeah.
wanted to learn more about the angels and doing the oracle cards, and it felt safe there. And I guess
Mm-hmm.
there was an element of people will get that more. If I start talking
Mm-hmm.
about that, they'll be more inclined. But then very quickly, I'd say probably within the first 3 months of me doing that, my people that was coming to me, they needed deeper stuff. I had people with all types of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I could really shine, because I knew, I was, my spirit guides were like, you can do this, you can do that. This is what we're going to do together. And I dived in. So if you have someone who kind of is a bit like me, has these
Mm-hmm.
gifts, and
Yeah.
kind of doesn't know how to get out there with them, would you
Mm-hmm.
suggest that they go in as they feel they should go in, or would you suggest that they go in lightly?
I love the reflection that you gave, again, knowing that you have Scorpio at the top of your house with Mercury and your sun in Scorpio. I'm like, yeah, you're supposed to go deep, like,
Yeah,
hello,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
transform, like, at the deepest core levels. Like,
yeah.
it's such a powerful work that you do. Um, so here's the thing. For me, it's getting to the core of why you think that's light.
Mm-hmm.
why you think that would be more,
Ah, that's
right?
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
like what were the inclinations there? What did someone, imprint into you about doing the deeper work, about maybe it means, and I don't want to like, but just to like, because this is often the fear is like, maybe it means that you're dark if you go into the darkness, or maybe it means
Uh,
that you're not light if you
yeah.
don't focus
Mm-hmm.
on the angels. And do you know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean?
Yeah, I think there was an element of that for
So
me.
it's like
Yeah.
looking at,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, well, because you have that depth, it's like, well, I want to show people it can be light too.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah.
um so to look at why we're starting where we are, and it's totally okay accepting it all, but there's a reason we're starting where we are. And typically it will have to do, well, not always, but a lot of times it'll have to do with where we have judgments of ourselves and where we don't feel safe and fully kind of being all out, right? Because
Mm.
and that's what, when we talk about coming out of the metaphysical closet, there are baby steps, and that's okay.
Mm.
It's like, it's totally okay to start where you're at and to learn and change and shift. And um at the same time, how powerful, if I do work with people, how powerful it is to just start there from the get-go,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like just
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I know why I was resisting this, I know why I was scared of this, and I'm going to show myself that I'm safe in doing this. So that's what I'd say is, it's all for a purpose. Like, I'm sure there was lessons in that for you that were important in your journey. And yeah, so I think that when we can get to the core of why we're choosing certain things, or why we believe, oftentimes it's just a judgment and fear of our own self, that we think people are thinking things about ourselves, about
Mm.
us, and about our work, and about us coming out of the closet. Like, my
Yeah.
friends from back home were more like, well, duh, like, than the people that knew me at an older age, because they saw like
Yeah.
the core essence of that, right? Because when
Uh-huh.
we're young, we can't really hide too much of who we are. But as we
Yeah.
get older, we learn how to mask it. We learn how to kind of separate ourselves from that core essence, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Wow.
And that's why working with the inner child is so powerful.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
certainly is. um okay, so obviously you ground yourself and you protect yourself regularly. What three pieces of, you know, advice would you give someone in terms of protecting their energy? What would you advise?
Yeah. And I think this has evolved over time too. Um, so for me, like, the top three things I would say about protecting your own energy is to recognize that if we're not grounded and anchored to ourself and to our body, we're going to be prone to picking up more things. There is something I talk about in Bitches Shine Brighter, which is my boundary setting. It's like an energetic boundary setting course, where when you're hypersensitive, not all the time, but many times it comes from, as a kid, not feeling safe. So you have to like go ping your energy, like, to the other side of the house, to make sure like something's happening. Like, if something's happening, about it. So that hypersensitivity actually becomes a thing that destabilizes our energy, and spreads us too thin.
Mhm.
And when we're spread too thin, we're much more open to parasitic energy, to I like won't even say, I shouldn't have said the word, it like triggers so many people, pops and bubbles, that triggers me, but to different things, because we're not here. And so other things can be here, right? So
Yeah.
for me, it's like that, just being aware of your own energy, being aware of your body, and really honoring if it's something that feels aligned for you to go out into the world at a certain time, or if it feels more aligned to not, or those kind of things, like just checking in and really honoring our truth.
Yeah.
And then also, I would say, if we're ever working too hard or trying too hard, so this is very common with people when they first start coming out of the metaphysical closet, and they're practicing their reading skills, or they're practicing things, and they're giving out like 10 sessions, and you're like, oof, you're trying too hard. And so when
Mhm.
you're trying too hard and you're not in your center, that also opens you up. And it also, there is something about energetically the investment being clear between two people, what the investment is. If there's not reciprocity in that in some capacity, the energy, like, the energy will always be paid back. And sometimes it's paid back in a way that we wouldn't choose from our highest good, but
Yeah.
that's from our lower self needing to prove something to somebody. So I'm going to give you this. And then what am I receiving back? Might not be the thing that I want to receive, right? So
Yeah.
that giving and receiving understanding is so important when you first start out, because it's like if you're just giving, the thing that you're receiving is going to be something that you wouldn't consciously choose. It's going to be from that
Yeah.
shadow self.
Okay, that's amazing. Thank you for
I don't
that.
think that was 3, but it was a lot. So sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Crystals, which is your favorite and why?
Okay, so I often have this obsidian
Yes.
on my lap when I'm doing something like this, or at my feet. I love having like you know how people have like the grounding mats. I'm like, I have my
Yeah.
obsidian. I love obsidian because it's like so connected to the lava, but and the fire, and but it's like also the transmutation of that. So that's probably my favorite. Any dark stones, I love obsidian. I just said that. I love black tourmaline.
Yeah.
I love all crystals, and I'm obsessed. And actually, my most popular video on YouTube, I was just looking at this morning.
Yeah.
Sorry, my phone's, I forgot to do the do not disturb thing.
That's okay.
Um, I was just looking at this morning. My video on YouTube, like, that is the most popular. It's got 18K views, and all these people commenting. A lot of them are haters. It's so hilarious because I did it as a joke 4 years ago. I didn't do the video as a joke. It's what crystals to not have in your bedroom or something.
Yeah.
I titled it in a very like catchy way because I was like, you know, it's like such like clickbait, like what to
Yeah.
not have in your bedroom. Like this is dangerous, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
like, I was like,
Oh, let me see.
I
Yeah.
better look.
Okay.
But it is funny because that's how I'm obsessed with crystals. So I love
Yes.
crystals.
Uh-huh. Oh, brilliant. So, do you have anything, any offers coming up in the new year that you'd like to share with anyone?
I
Everyone.
do. I have a membership that I'm really excited about for 2023. It's the Spellbreakers Club. It's all about quantum liberation in 2023 based on this modality that I've pieced together from all of the different modalities that there are that I know of. And it's a membership where every month we go in and we do this process together. So I'm really excited about that. This is something that I haven't really done in this capacity before. So
Yeah.
it's very exciting to me. So that's the Spellbreakers Club. It starts in January,
Uh-huh.
and we'll have on open enrollment from there. And then I also have one-on-one coaching. I have lots of courses and lots of different ways to work with me. I do a year ahead reading um, that is a recorded reading based on the astrology and tarot. So I look at each month and each season. It's really fun. It's really powerful. A lot of things come through. And so, yeah, lots of different ways.
Oh, wow. And how can everyone find you?
So my handle on the socials is Sparkle and Shine Guidance. And then my website is just my name, abigailbarella.com.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, Abigail. I've learnt so much.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like it's such a fun conversation with you. You hold such magnificent space. So
Oh,
it's always
thank
great.
you. Thank you. But yes, I will be putting all the links to Abigail's social media and website underneath the post. So just hit her up on the link, and yeah, dive deep into your astrology. I feel like everyone needs it. I really
So
do. But thank you for joining us today. Until the next time, take care.